What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. We have got a busy waiver wire week for sure. Not only do we have 4 teams on bye, the Dolphins, Commanders, Broncos, and Chargers. We also have Jamar Chase facing a 1-game suspension. We've got running back injuries, but cloudy situations there. We've got Jacoby Brissett, who's on fire. We've got Dave Richard. We got Jamey Eisenberg. I have random questions for you guys. Jamey Eisenberg, because this is the last CBS Sports Network show, I believe, until after the holiday. What's your favorite Thanksgiving side dish? What are you fired up for next week?
Pumpkin pie. It's the best thing that you can possibly have on Thanksgiving. I don't know why anybody would not like pumpkin pie and go for anything else.
Revolting. It's not a side dish, so you already fail. That's a dessert. Completely different, but it's revolting. Dave, random question for you. You'll get a football question. Who's going to win the Super Bowl?
I mean, I think pumpkin pie is a good side dish. I have pumpkin pie with, I have pumpkin pie 12 months a year, Adam. It's going to be the Buffalo Bills.
Ooh. It's not a side dish.
They're a football team. Buffalo Bills are a football team.
Are they going to win this week against the best defense in football? Can't wait for that matchup. But before we get to Thursday, we got to get through Tuesday. We got to talk about the waiver wire. So we do have a Jaylen Warren update since the last time we spoke to you. Is he might be able to play this week. Kind of a positive, optimistic tone from Mike Tomlin on Jaylen Warren, but nothing definitive there. So I need your top 3 waiver wire priorities. Dave, we'll start with you.
Emmanuel Wilson is at the top of the list. This is the backup running back in Green Bay. We saw him replace Josh Jacobs in Week 11. He didn't do a bad job. I think he'll be the lead running back for them this week against Minnesota, and he might even have 2 weeks' worth of action taking over for Josh Jacobs, assuming that Josh Jacobs misses time. That's one of those cloudy situations that we'll talk about. And then I just want to keep it really simple with the next 2 names on my list. I'm not going to look at the other running backs because they might play, they might not play based on other players' availability. But I do think Michael Wilson will be playing as the number 1 wide receiver for Arizona. And I know Juwan Johnson is going to be the number 2 target getter for the New Orleans Saints in week number 12. So my top 3, Emmanuel Wilson. I knew somebody named Ernest Wilson. I can't believe I said that. But Emmanuel Wilson is number 1. Michael Wilson is number 2. And then Juwan Johnson is number 3.
All right, let's go over to Ernest Eisenberg. Who are your top 3 priorities?
Yeah, I had Kenneth Gainwell first. I'm going to switch that and put Eli Wilson first. So Emmanuel Wilson will be at the top, and then Kenneth Gainwell will still be second. I'm going to go Michael Wilson third. I still think there's a chance here that Jaylen Warren, doesn't practice. And if you were to tell me right now, both Kenneth Gainwell and Emmanuel Wilson are starting, I'm taking Kenneth Gainwell. So that's still something to keep an eye on there. I think Gainwell has shown us right now 2 games where he's been the featured guy, 1 at the start of the game, 1 the majority of the game, 29 PPR points in both, 29 or more PPR points in both of those. So great matchup against the Bears. So it would be fun to have him starting if you don't have your hands on Jaylen Warren.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting is I did my claims and I found myself actually prioritizing, not in every case, but in some cases, Michael Wilson number 1. I don't know if Harrison's coming back. I'm not a doctor anymore, but not a doctor at all. Never have been. But who do you think scores more PPR fantasy points if all 3 guys are out? How would you rank them? Let's say Marvin Harrison's out, Jaylen Warren's out, and Josh Jacobs is out, Jamey. Then how would you rank the 3 replacements just in terms of pure PPR fantasy points?
I have it right now. Gainwell 1, Michael Wilson 2, Emmanuel Wilson 3. Again, what Gainwell has done as a pass catcher has been fantastic. And what he did when he was a featured runner in that game against Minnesota, the Bears' run defense doesn't scare anybody. And I think what the Steelers have shown you, especially if it's going to be Mason Rudolph, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't play, they'll lean on Gainwell in that matchup. So I love the upside for him. So he would be number 1 for me.
Yeah, it took what Mike Tomlin said for Kenneth Gainwell to fall out of that top 3 for me. Because obviously, if there was no Jaylen Warren, then we'd see Kenneth Gainwell get a huge opportunity. It might even be a top 12 running back. I think if you've got Jaylen Warren on your fantasy team, you should still prioritize Gainwell, just in case Warren doesn't make it. But usually Mike Tomlin's pretty honest about his players' injuries. He's straight up in his press conferences. If he's optimistic that Jaylen Warren's going to play, then at minimum I would expect a 50-50 split between those running backs, and that's not good for anybody's upside in fantasy.
Okay, so usually the running backs are not great on the waiver wire. It's like, oh yeah, you can pick up this handcuff, or hopefully this guy who scores 8 points. But this week might be a little bit different. Let's take a look at our favorite waiver wire running backs. That's the position we're going to start with today. And obviously you've got Gainwell and you've got Emmanuel Wilson, but you do have some other good options as well, right? There's Zonovan Knight. There's Chris Rodriguez, who's on a bye. But, Jamey, let's talk about Knight. And there's also Sean Tucker we'll talk about. But the opportunity for Knight, because DeMarcado has a high ankle sprain. Jaguars are sixth best against running backs. But it's certainly possible that he ends up being the best waiver wire running back this week. What kind of priority should Zonovan Knight be?
I think he's either third or fourth, depending on how you feel about Sean Tucker. So if we don't have Bucky Irving back, so let's say we find out, today, get a report, or, Wednesday for leagues that run waivers on Wednesday, that Bucky Irving's going to practice in full, then I think you put Knight at worst third, and you just look at the situation that we've seen since week 4. So from week 5 on, which is week 4 is when James Conner got hurt, every game, the Cardinals had at least one running back get 9.4 PPR points or more. In some cases, they've had multiple running backs do that because we've seen them share touches a lot. The week 5 game was when Trey Benson got injured. So you're looking at a scenario where if there is no Benson, there is no DeMarcado, it'll be Michael Carter who Zonovan Knight is sharing with. And I think the Cardinals have kind of given us the indication that they don't really want to trust Michael Carter too much. So I think Zonovan Knight is at worst a flex. And so if you say Jacobs is playing, Jaylen Warren is playing, then Gainwell and Emmanuel Wilson fall way down the rank list, and Zonovan Knight pushes up even higher. So it could be a borderline number 2 running back. So he might end up actually being the best of the bunch, because if Bucky Irving plays and the 2 guys in Pittsburgh and Green Bay respectively play, Zonovan Knight's going to be the one that gets the most opportunities.
Dave, your thoughts on the waiver wire running backs this week?
I think it's plentiful. I think it's smart for fantasy managers to try and pick up 1 or 2 of these guys, bolster that bench, because a player that might be like in a part-time role this week could always end up being a superstar a week or 2 later. And in the case of Sean Tucker, we see the talent. He's really been outstanding when he's had the opportunity, at least compared to Rachaad White. I don't think there's any question now that if Tampa goes into week 12 and there's no Bucky Irving, Sean Tucker will be the lead running back for them. It's a tough matchup. It's against the Rams, but I think Tucker has certainly proven that he's the more effective runner in Tampa Bay. Maybe not the best on passing downs. That could still go to Rachaad White. But if Bucky Irving, who was starting to practice a little bit last week, if he ends up practicing a little bit more this week, then we're talking about potentially a 3-headed monster. And Sean Tucker, someone that is a desperation flex, maybe just ends up on your bench. But if Irving gets hurt again, or Tampa decides, and Jamey, you've speculated on this, that Rachaad White is just falling out of favor, and we have a 2-headed monster between Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker, then you'll be glad you've got him on your fantasy team. And I think there's a case to be made for most of these running backs that you'll be happy to have on your squad one way or another. They won't be superstars that could help you win the entire league, but maybe for a week or 2, it could be now, could be later, they can absolutely help you out.
Anybody want to pick up or stash Chris Rodriguez, 18% rostered, by this week, and then unfortunately gets Denver next week? It's not not super appealing for a guy who never catches the ball. But Jamey, any interest in Chris Rodriguez?
You have to have interest in him. I mean, anytime, again, you're finding a starting running back, and yes, he does not have the pass-catching chops that we love to see from a lot of guys that are in this role. He did have 1 catch last week, first time in the last 3 games, but he did score 2 touchdowns each of the 2 previous games. And so, again, looking at how this offense may operate, we don't know who the quarterback's going to be coming back from their bye week. Jaden Daniels may be able to return from the elbow injury. They're expected to get Terry McLaurin back. So we could be looking at maybe the best version of Washington, even in a tough matchup against Denver, than we've seen in the entirety of the season, because Daniels in and out of the lineup, McLaurin obviously in and out of the lineup, the running back situation has been a mess. So maybe we do get a better version of Washington, and the touchdown potential is there. But he's not going to be anything more than a low-end number 2 running back, high-end flex. So again, if we find out Jacobs is out for multiple weeks, maybe this Warren ankle injury isn't as positive as, or report's not as positive as we expect it to be, I don't think he's anywhere close to Gainwell or Emmanuel Wilson in terms of upside, because they're still going to give touches to the other guys there. But you should absolutely be picking up Chris Rodriguez if you have the ability to carry him throughout his bye.
I'd like to talk about another running back that I think you should pick up and just see what happens, and that's Bashal Tutin in Jacksonville. We know that Travis Etienne is the main runner there, and he's been doing a great job over the last 3 or 4 weeks, but we did see Tutin play right alongside of Etienne last week, and he was great. I wonder if there's going to be opportunities for him to be more of like that 1B type of running back that we talk about, and Etienne is the 1A. I'm not saying you should add him and immediately start him, and I know he's got an ankle injury as well. You've got to make sure that he clears through that, but he sounded optimistic after last week's game. Jacksonville might lean on their run game until further notice, because they've got 2 good backs. Their offensive line is healthy enough. And I could see Bashal Tutin being somebody that's an addition and an improvement to fantasy benches moving forward. And there is a situation where if I really like my running back starters and I just want some good depth, Rodriguez would be on that list. But I think I'd rather have Tutin just for the upside in case he does continue to split carries close to evenly with ETN.
You guys haven't done your waiver claims yet, right?
No.
No, we're normal.
Yeah, so I like to knock it out early here, but I got this one league. You never get something like this. I've got Emmanuel Wilson, Michael Wilson, Kenneth Gainwell, Sean Tucker, Alec Pierce, Juwan Johnson, Basil Tootin. I've got all of those guys, claims in for all of them. I need two. I need to start two of them this week because I got a lot of buys, and I've got Jamar Chase. This is a 10-team league. So look, 12-team leagues. I've done all of my waiver claims, 12-team leagues, 14-team leagues. Not all of these guys are out there, but in those 10-team leagues, you're going to have some tough decisions to make.
It's nice that you're running your wife's league again.
No, this is the Beat Chad Smith League. I'm in 5th place, need to be 4th to get in the playoffs, and this is a 10-team league. It's perfectly reasonable for these guys to be available in 10-team leagues, but I have been sort of gravitating to Michael Wilson because, Gainwell, I moved behind him, obviously, because of the news. But Wilson, I just think, will probably be better than Michael Wilson. Just a guess. But those are my top two claims. But Tootin is there. I'd be happy to start him, but right now I would start Alec Pierce and Juwan Johnson over Basil Tootin. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I know it's a little off topic. Well,
yeah,
really,
it's too early to start Basil Tootin, but he's definitely somebody that should be stashed on your team.
Yeah, for sure. It's weird to talk about stashes right now, but maybe he could help you down the stretch. All right, we're going to take a break, and we're going to talk about another position. We got every position, but I think next we're going to talk about wide receivers. Yeah, wide receivers are coming up next. Michael Wilson, how good can he be? How good will he be when Marvin Harrison is back, whenever that may be? We'll tell you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. Huge game from Michael Wilson last week. Okay, 33.5 PPR fantasy points, 15 catches, 185 yards on 18 targets. And I'm going to ask you guys about that, but first I'm going to interrupt this regularly scheduled programming for an impromptu game of America's 10th favorite fantasy football-related game show. Who has more?
Please be a tie.
Who has more? Got three options here. More 30-point PPR fantasy games this year: CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, or Michael Wilson?
I want to say Pickens is the answer. I will go with George Pickens.
I'll say Michael Wilson with 1.
George Pickens is the answer, Dave Richard. You win a disgusting pumpkin pie. He has 2 games, and not including last night where he scored 29.4. CeeDee Lamb has not, I don't think CeeDee Lamb has been over 23 fantasy points this year. He's a bum. But Michael Wilson, huge game. All right, so waiver wire. Let's take a look at the priority list here. Jamey, I think this was probably an easy call on who to make number 1 this week.
Yeah, by far. What Wilson was able to accomplish, it could be considered fluky because of the 57 pass attempts from Jacoby Brissett. But this is now 5 starts for Brissett, and he's been 44 or more attempts in 3 of those. So the volume has been there. And then when you look at what Marvin Harrison was doing prior to him going out, a 10-target game, a 12-target game, so 22 targets over the previous 2 outings, I think we could see 10 targets or more for Michael Wilson again. So it was a great performance. He took advantage of it. I think the biggest question is what happens if Harrison returns at the end of the week and you spend a lot of fab on Michael Wilson. I would not be confident in starting Wilson with Harrison back on the field because his body of work, really for his career, but certainly for this season, has not been overwhelming. He's got 1 touchdown on the year, and so I don't expect him to be a prominent fantasy option if Harrison comes back. So you're basically banking on if Harrison's gone, he's got top 15 upside, maybe top 12 upside. If Harrison is back, you can almost cut Michael Wilson. That's how bad he's been.
Dave, you agree with that Michael Wilson has basically no value if Harrison's back?
Well, I can't say no value because 8 PPR points is a value, but we're talking about a number 3 receiver in deeper leagues, maybe a flex and a 3 receiver, 1 flex league, and that's got to be full PPR because that's what he was doing beforehand. And listen, the target volume is really the thing. Fantasy football is all about opportunity, and I certainly didn't expect that type of an opportunity for Michael Wilson last week, but he came through and he was great, and I think he can potentially do that again. Well, okay, I don't think he can have that same type of volume again. But, Jamey, you said it, 10 or 12 targets, If he gets that, that's 7+ catches. If he averages 10 yards per catch, we can do the math on that. That's in the neighborhood of 14 or 15 PPR points. That's a good number 2 wide receiver. I want Marvin Harrison to take another week off. He had some serious surgery. Let him relax. And the Cardinals should be okay with it because of how this offense operated. And it's Jacksonville as well. That secondary I don't think is particularly great. They've got some injuries in place. And Jacoby Brissett's throwing the ball really well right now. So Michael Wilson is absolutely in a spot where as long as Marvin Harrison's out, a must-start fantasy wide receiver in full PPR.
You know what, Dave? You don't get enough credit for the care that you have for the individual. Talking about Marvin Harrison, just let him rest, let him rehab. That was really nice of you, Dave. It didn't go unnoticed over here. If we could pull that list up one more time. Do we see anyone on this list that has long-term potential, guy that I might be starting half the time or more rest of season, Jamey?
The only one would be Christian Watson if he starts to get more opportunities, because we know the upside is there. And, 2-touchdown game on 5 targets. Like, he's got game-breaking ability, but we clearly have not seen it in a long time because of the ACL tear and then the slow recovery this season. But without Tucker Kraft, there's really no go-to guy in this offense that you could say, okay, I'm starting this guy with any confidence. Romeo Dobbs has been getting targets, but he just hasn't been producing. So if they started to give those opportunities, more targets, more chances, certainly down the field, to Christian Watson, then we could see that type of player becoming at least a starter in 3 receiver leagues with some confidence. So he's the only one really for me. Parker Washington's going to lose value when we have Brian Thomas back. Obviously, Yoshivas is a 1-week situation with the Jamar Chase suspension. You go on down the list. There's no real standout guy that you could say, okay, this guy's got long-term starting ability. I'd love it to be Jaden Higgins, just because 7 targets or more in 3 of his last 4. But that's with Davis Mills starting 2 of those. We don't know if C.J. Stroud will feature him. With Dalton Schultz, with Nico Collins, it's just hard to say that he's going to be consistent.
Can I give 2 names that might be able to fit that bill, but it's in deeper leagues, Adam?
I'll allow it.
Josh Downs in Indianapolis in full PPR leagues has given you at least 11 PPR points in 4 of his last 5. Good underneath player. Obviously, in games where Jonathan Taylor takes off, there's not going to be much opportunity for him there. But as a starter, potentially, as a 3rd receiver in full PPR, I think he could be there. And I'm still stashing Luther Burden in Chicago. We saw him get another uptick in playing time. Olamide Zaccheaus didn't even have a target last week. He's fallen out of favor in this offense in Chicago. DJ Moore didn't do anything great last week. I wonder if Luther Burden can continue to develop and maybe become, this could be a little bit bold, but the 2nd best target earner for Chicago down the stretch. That's a receiver I wouldn't mind putting on my bench.
Yeah, I like I said, I did all my waiver claims. I think 1 league I put in a claim for Darnell Mooney because it's something that you want to see. But we've got a team that's pretty much out of it with Drake London week to week. So look, London could be back next week for all I know. But I am nervous that this injury lingers and that they don't bring him back. So Mooney, if he is the number 1 wide receiver, I could see him turning things around and being somewhat reliable rest of season. But let's talk about it. And Kayshon Boutte, by the way, Kayshon Boutte just kind of produces, and he has the best deep ball thrower in football. But let's focus on week 12. Because Jamey, you like Andre Yoshivas. You gave a good stat about him when he gets his targets. Dave, I don't think is quite as on board with Yoshivas.
No, I've changed my tune. I think Yoshivas is for a 1-week option. It's pretty good, and it's all about opportunity more than anything else. I don't want to steal Jamey's thunder.
No, you're fine.
All right, then I'll take over. Listen, we've seen it twice this year, once last year, when he's had at least 7 targets in a game, 13-plus PPR points. Jamar Chase not playing this week, or at least we expect him not to play because he's suspended for Cincinnati. That's going to open up opportunities for other players on the Bengals, and Joe Flacco is going to have to get that ball out really, really quickly. I expect a monster game for T. Higgins, by the way, but I think Yoshivas in full PPR could be the next best pass catcher ahead of Noah Fant. I didn't give him enough credit. And the stat that really put me over the top, Adam, take a look at how the Patriots have done against receivers who line up in the slot this year. 7 touchdowns allowed to receivers that line up in the slot, and there's been a lot of busts. They struggle to cover those guys. I'm hoping that Yoshivas gets in the neighborhood of 7 targets. That could mean 13 PPR points. No one's going to turn their nose up at that. And a chance at a touchdown on top of that could end up being a fairly high-scoring game between the Bengals and the Patriots. If Yoshivas plays at least 50% of the snaps in the slot, I feel good about his chances to be at least a high-end number 3 receiver this week.
All right. By the way, I just turned my nose up. It didn't really go very well. I hope nobody noticed that, but they probably did. And Yeah, just one point. I don't know if this is even kind of a clumsy point. I'm going to try to make it. You guys can help me. Picking up Jaden Higgins. If you pick up Jaden Higgins tonight or tomorrow, you are pretty much obligated to use him because he plays on Thursday. Sometimes you pick up a guy, the week goes by, you don't need him, you drop him. You can't do that with Jaden Higgins. It's been encouraging with Higgins. 7 targets in 2 straight games. He's been 9.5 or more fantasy points in both games. It's not bad. He's had 26% target share or better in both games. That's terrific. But the Bills have been really good against passing offenses, really good against number 2 wide receivers. So I like Higgins. I was going to pick him up, but I thought to myself, if I pick him up, I have pretty much no options. I have to start Jaden Higgins. And then if I don't start him, I have this useless player on my bench that I can't drop until next week. So it's just something to keep in mind whenever you have Thursday games.
But if you like him long-term, why do you have to just pick him up to play him this week?
I don't really like him that much long-term, I guess.
Why? That's interesting.
What, that I don't like him long-term?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a good player. We know that the run game for Houston can be hot one week, cold the next week. I mean, we literally just saw that against Tennessee in week 11. They were ice cold after Woody Marks had a good game the week before. He's a good perimeter receiver. He's got an unbelievable catch radius. He's kind of like Nico Collins in that regard. And if this team's going to have to keep on throwing, yeah, this week against Buffalo, I wouldn't feel good about it. But this is another player that I would put him on a stash list. Would he be at the top of that list? No. But he's on that list, maybe like a top 4 or 5 wide receiver. And so people watching that are in deeper leagues, they might not be able to get a lot of the players that we're talking about, but they'll be able to get Jaden Higgins. And I don't hate the idea. I think he's good.
I just don't like stashing guys who play on Thursday because if you have something that comes up later in the week, an injury, bad weather, something like that, you've got a dead roster spot. That's my only issue.
Sure. And if he doesn't do anything big this week, you could just pick him up next week. Takes on Indianapolis. That's another game that's a more favorable matchup for Houston, and they might have to throw a lot in that one.
Okay. All right. That's it for the wide receivers. Which quarterbacks are we picking up off the waiver wire? We'll tell you after this. We have some quarterback needy teams out there. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. We're going to talk about the quarterbacks with Jacoby Brissett, 40% rostered, facing the Jaguars. They give up the 5th most fantasy points to quarterbacks, and then the Buccaneers. Does anybody, by the way, Jamey, is there any fear at all in your mind about Kyler Murray coming back and being the starter, or is this Brissett's job for the rest of the year?
Well, he can't play for another 2 games. So the 2 matchups that we're very excited about, Jacksonville and Tampa Bay, you're going to get Jacoby Brissett as the starter. If he wants to come back and play Houston, good luck. So at this point, I don't expect Kyler Murray to play again for the Cardinals, certainly not this season. And so I think Jacoby Brissett's in a great spot. You should, I don't want to say unload the fab clip for him if you need a quarterback, but he certainly is somebody that should be rostered and potentially started this week and even next week. He's just been so consistent, 23 or more fantasy points in all 5 starts. Again, 3 of those, 44 or more attempts. He's been throwing the ball a lot. The run game, while the running back production fantasy-wise has been good, the run game has been non-existent. So it should be an opportunity once again with Marvin Harrison, without Marvin Harrison. Michael Wilson did a great job. Trey McBride's been unleashed, and it's been fun to watch. So Jacoby Brissett is a top 10 fantasy quarterback this week.
And Dave, I would say the rest of the waiver wire priority list is the pumpkin pie of quarterback waiver wire list because it's awful. Nobody likes it. And the people who tell you that they do like it are lying or have bad tastes in quarterbacks. Would you agree with that?
No, I think you're disparaging pumpkin pie with that because the rest of this list isn't particularly great. There is a definite drop off from Jacoby Brissett to everybody else on this list. I'm not sure if there's another quarterback on this list that's a guarantee for 23 fantasy points like Jacoby Brissett is. If I had to take a stab on one, though, I'd say Bryce Young. Going up against the 49ers, it's a defense that can't get pressure on the quarterback. It's a team that has an offense that can put points on the board that's going to force the Panthers to, at minimum, try and keep up. That means that Bryce Young is going to have to throw a little bit more than what we're used to. And maybe he can get you around 18 fantasy points, 20 fantasy points if things are going the right way. If he can connect with Teterow and McMillan to the same level that he did last week, then we can talk about a little bit more than that. But I worry about the other quarterbacks on this list having a big game. And in cases of several of them, I'm not sure if they're even going to play. You see Mason Rudolph on the list. If Aaron Rodgers plays, Rudolph is going to be a backup. He's not going to help you. If Jackson Dart is is cleared from the concussion protocol, then Jameis Winston's not going to play. You're going to see Jackson Dart play for the New York Giants. It really is kind of a gross list once you get past the very tippy top.
It is. There are some players that are rostered in more leagues than this, like Jaden Daniels, you might want to stash. Joe Burrow, you might want to stash. He could be back in week 13. We do have Aaron Rodgers. We're not going to want to start him. But Joe Flacco is another guy that's set about 70% rostered, and you could start him. But yeah, you mentioned Bryce Young. Just on San Francisco, they've allowed 25.7 or more fantasy points to 4 straight quarterbacks. 25.7 or more fantasy points. That's crazy. So one thing here, Jamey, I'll throw this to you, is we've got some great quarterbacks with tough matchups. Are you looking at other options? I'll just say it. If you have Josh Allen at Houston.
No.
If you have Joe Flacco, again, 70% rostered against the Patriots with no Jamar Chase, most likely.
The only one is Brissett.
And the last one is Dak Prescott going up against the Eagles. This Eagles defense is so good right now. This game is in Dallas, thankfully. But Dave, how do you feel about Dak Prescott this week? Should we be looking for other options?
I would rather start Brissett. I'm very nervous about Dak, who had an amazing game against the Raiders on Monday. It was his first great game in 3 weeks, and I'm with you. I buy into this Philadelphia defense all the way. They're playing great. This is going to be a tough one for the Cowboys. So Dak is a top 12 quarterback for me, but just the track record that we've seen and the matchup that we've got for Jacoby Brissett, I trust him more than Dak Prescott this week.
How about Caleb Williams against the Steelers, Jamey?
Just again, Brissett. I think the guys that we're looking at here, Bryce Young's rostered in too many leagues to be super flex or 2 QB option. But those other guys, really, that's what we're talking about here. Jameis on down, they're rostered in less than 10% of leagues. So if you're starting these guys in one quarterback leagues, I think you're really in trouble. So you got to be very desperate to be looking at these guys in those formats.
You feel that way about Rudolph? He's got, if he plays. The Bears, they're 27th against quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's a great matchup. I mean, that's why he's, relatively high on this list. But again, I don't think you should have to be in a situation where you're starting these guys in a one quarterback league. Think about the guys who are missing this week. You've already been dealing with the Jaden Daniels injury for 2 games. You have Tua, who was a waiver wire priority last week. So whether he was replacing a starter who was on bye or dealing with, just somebody in that rotation. You mentioned a few guys that were dropped. I think you're going to see Sam Darnold available on a lot of waiver wires because people passed on him. I think you may see Daniel Jones on a couple waiver wires. You're certainly going to see Joe Flacco based on his roster percentage on some waiver wires. So these are guys that are all better than everybody but Brissett on that list. So, we work in a certain range. We tend to, you do a good job of bringing up other sites and what their percentages is in terms of players who are available. But really for our purposes, go get Jacoby Brissett. If you can't get Brissett, look for one of these other guys. I mean, Brock Purdy's been on so many different waiver wires, so many leagues for me.
That's a good name to bring up.
I think he's just somebody that people were either hesitant to pick up because of the toe injury, waiting to see when he was going to come back. There's going to be a priority to go get him as well. So I just hope a lot of people aren't starting Bryce Young or Jameis Winston in a one quarterback league.
And this is the lamest of hot takes, but I thought Brock Purdy looked amazing in his first game back, and he can build on that. The matchup against Carolina is favorable. So at bare minimum, do a double check. Make sure that Brock Purdy isn't out there. I'd still rather start Brissett, but Purdy's going to be in that same range as some quarterbacks like Flacco, Caleb Williams, Jordan Love maybe. Like he's probably going to be ahead of those guys for me this week. That's how good he looked, and that's how nice the matchup is for him against the Panthers.
Would you start Purdy over Dak Prescott?
Yeah.
It's going to be close. I think I have Dak just a few spots higher, if even more than one spot higher.
I'm going to have to maybe put in a claim for Brock Purdy in one of my leagues. All right, so that's the kind of the quarterback landscape here. Going into the bye, do you feel like you need to hang on to Bo Nix and Justin Herbert?
I mean, again, look at the guys we're talking about as waiver wire replacements. So if you put Bo Nix or Justin Herbert out there, I would guess a lot of people are going to go run to get them. Bo Nix gets the Commanders coming off of their bye week. The Chargers, I'm the East Coast start was probably something I should have factored in a little bit more for Herbert going into their bye week. Maybe they were looking to thinking it was going to be an easy win because Jacksonville was struggling. I don't know. They just didn't look like themselves. Offensive line's clearly a mess for the Chargers, but Herbert, for the most part, has been more successful than that. So if I see those two guys on waiver wire, I'm probably going to go pick them up.
They both have great matchups coming off the bye. You mentioned Washington for Bo Nix and Vegas for Herbert.
And then Bo Nix sorry to interrupt, but Bo Nix has Vegas the week after Washington. So it's 2 good weeks for Bo Nix.
Yeah, but it is Philadelphia and Kansas City in weeks 14 and 15 for Justin Herbert. Then Dallas, I still think that's probably good, but not great. And then Houston, which is obviously terrible. Okay. All right. Let's talk about tight ends. We'll do that when we come back. Juwan Johnson I'm surprised people didn't pick him up more so last week. I know he was going into a bye, but great opportunity for Juwan Johnson to finish strong. He's widely available, and we'll tell you the other tight ends that you need to pick up when we come back. Back here on Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Adam Aizer, Dave Richard, and Jamey Eisenberg. All right, so the tight ends. Dave, how are you feeling about the waiver wire tight ends? It's been a position, I feel like week after week, we've been like, there's some pretty good options, but as the years gone by, they've all been picked up for the most part. So you still like it, or is it dwindling a little bit, the talent on the waiver wire?
We've had better weeks than this, but this is still not a bad week. You can see the names on the screen with Juwan Johnson, the cherry on top. It feels like he gets double-digit PPR points pretty much every single week. Certainly lately he's been doing a lot of that, and we know that Rashid Shaheed on to Seattle. That's opened up targets for Juwan Johnson. And I think we'll still continue to see New Orleans throw him the football. Basically, he's the number 2 target getter behind Chris Olave. The other names on this list, Brenton Strange is really interesting to me. I think he's got 10 PPR points on a weekly basis. In his view, Dalton Schultz can do the same thing. Yeah, maybe even this week against Buffalo. There's other names on there, A.J. Barner, Chigakonkwo. They're not bad. I think it's a week, but without high expectations. Does that make sense, Adam? Like a lot of the names, would it surprise you if all 5 of those names played in week 12, that they all got to 10 PPR points and none of them got to like 13 PPR points? That wouldn't surprise me. Would it surprise you?
Yes. It would surprise me if A.J. Barner got to 10 PPR fantasy points, even though he has the knack for doing it, but it feels kind of fluky. It would kind of surprise me it would just surprise me if all of them did.
I think Dave was going the other way. Like if they all did well.
No, 10 PPR points. Which isn't bad for a tight end. Like that's a good low-end fantasy tight end. You're not competing with Trey McBride with 10 PPR points.
No, unless Kyler is his quarterback. But So Dalton Schultz has been so good, but gosh, he has the worst matchup. So should we pick him up? Should we pick him up and stash him? Jamey, should we pick him up and start Dalton Schultz? What do you think?
I mean, if you have the ability to start another tight end, so if you're just looking to pick up somebody for a potential flex play down the road, then, barring your theory about not stashing players on Thursday night that you don't want to carry. But I think in the case of what Dalton Schultz has shown, and again, it's been with C.J. Stroud, it's been with Davis Mills, he's been very consistent, certainly in the last, month plus. So I would want to carry Dalton Schultz, but if I don't have to play Dalton Schultz against the Bills, it's the same thing that happened with Cade Otton. We were so fired up about Cade Otton. Yeah. It's basically almost like a foolproof situation because he's going to get all these targets, and then the Bills just take the tight end away. So it's not going to be easy for Schultz. He's going to hopefully get 5+ targets. Maybe he gets 8+ targets. He could still get you around 10 PPR points. They just eliminate that position. They did a great job against Otton. They do a great job against everybody. So I do not want to start Schultz if I don't have to.
It's at least 11 PPR points in 5 of his last 6 games, Dalton Schultz. And what he does in this offense is just makes himself available as a short and intermediate option. If you buy into just how offenses operate and you pick players based on that, then I don't mind starting Dalton Schultz. But it's as a low-end tight end. I like Juwan Johnson better. If Brenton Strange were to play, I would like him better than Dalton Schultz as well. And you might not know that by the time we get to Thursday's game. So it really depends on how desperate you are for a tight end, whether or not you want to use Dalton Schultz.
If Kyle Pitts were available, where would he rank amongst waiver wire tight ends?
What's the format?
At worst, 2.
In full PPR for this week, at worst 2. I'll agree. In non-PPR, I don't know if he'd be quite that high because I think he's going to catch a lot of short throws, and that's it. That's what we saw from him the last time that he played with Kirk Cousins. But he saw 9 targets. He got 9 catches. I think you can buy into that.
How about the Browns tight ends? How are we feeling about them right now, Jamey?
I think you got to downgrade them both, just until we see Shadur Sanders play a game. It's surprisingly not an easy matchup. I know Ferguson scored a touchdown, but the Raiders came into that game top 5 in terms of fewest fantasy points allowed to the position. I'll tell you where they are coming out of the game. But look, they're 4th fewest fantasy points to the position. So
that's interesting.
Njoku's got 4 combined targets in the last 2 games. Fannin is definitely the one you want to lean on if you're talking about one of these 2 guys. But Fannin's last 2 games have not been great either. His best game of the season has come when David Njoku was hurt. So until, I think at least for me, I see Sanders leaning on both these guys or leaning on one of them, I'm going to treat Fannin as somebody that I'd like to stash on my bench. Njoku, I'm going to find a replacement. If they come out of this game with a strong performance, then I'll try and get Njoku back or feel more confident starting Fannin. But I don't think that what Fannin has done earns him just a complete pass on if he has a bad game, you just keep starting him. He's not a set it and forget it guy, at least for me. So if I can move on from Fannin, certainly Njoku, to get Juwan Johnson, I'm doing it in a heartbeat.
And how about Theo Johnson, Dave? One more guy to talk about here. And I have a little bit of a theory about the Giants. I'll run it by you.
I hated that he had a bad game last week, and I don't want that to completely trash my opinion of him, but I think he's a borderline starter at best, knowing that he had this golden opportunity against Green Bay to go in there and see a lot of targets. What are you doing, shaking your head all over the place, Adam?
I was just adjusting in my seat.
Oh, okay, all right. I thought you were trying to do some sort of Theo Johnson joke or something like that. Maybe I can do it too. Maybe if we do more of this, Theo Johnson will go back to being 13 PPR points, and that's what we saw. Now I'm getting dizzy. A borderline starter. He does have upside to be better than the Browns tight ends, for example. You just have to buy into his role in the offense, and that the Giants could actually. Now, what is he doing? Now is he doing exercises?
The wave.
Potential top 12 tight end in full PPR, who I'm not sure if I'm ready to go back to.
Okay, here's my theory, because I've actually put in some claims for Isaiah Hodgins. And if Slayton plays, I'll change those to Darius Slayton. You had 29 pass attempts from Jameis Winston on a day where the Giants ran the ball well against the Packers in a cold weather, windy game. I live up here. It was windy. It stunk this week. I hated every second of it, including yesterday. We had a lot of really bad passing performances, and guys just didn't want to throw the ball. Giants are now going to Detroit. They just scored 9 points against the Eagles. Now they're coming home to face this Giants defense. Detroit's going to score at least 60 points in this game. You're going to get at least 80 pass attempts. Now, you probably get at least 35 pass attempts from Jameis. Dart, not as much because he runs, but if it's Jameis, you're going to get a lot of pass attempts. And the Lions have been pretty bad against tight ends last week, notwithstanding against Dallas Goedert. So I think the Giants' passing game bounces back a little bit this week. Oh, there you go. There's my theory.
Okay. Not a bad theory. I like that they're indoors and chasing points. That should be good. Certainly should be good for Jameis Winston to at least throw the ball more than he did last week. If they somehow manage to run the ball as well as they did last week,
they won't.
Yeah, I'm thinking that that's an unlikely scenario, but in the event that they do, that'll hurt Theo Johnson. I'd be okay with him as a bye week replacement. I'm saying the same thing in 4 different ways.
Yeah.
Theo.
All right, so let me get one more guy in here. Noah Fant, with Jamar Chase suspended, appealing it, but likely suspended for 1 game. Patriots are 24th against tight ends, Jamey. Noah Fant, another guy I put in. See, this is why I do it before the show. I put in a claim for Noah Fant. So here we go.
Yeah, it's not a bad, desperation play. I think you look at, some of the guys that we showed on this list, Chico Conquo, for example, great matchup against Seattle. But Fant now has scored a touchdown in 2 of the 4 games with Joe Flacco under center. 2 of his last 3, 2 of his last 4. So there's going to be an uptick in targets, clearly, if Chase is not there. Again, a guy averaging, nearly 12 targets per game. I don't think it goes all to Yoshi Vass. I certainly don't think it goes all to T. Higgins. You would love to see that happen. But Fant, right now, his best game was last week, 6 targets, 5 catches, 36 yards. If he scores a touchdown, you're thrilled about that level of production from a tight end. So not a top 12 guy for me, but certainly a good desperation play if you're missing somebody this week at the position.
You heard Jamey mention Chigo Okonkwo. The Titans receiving core is banged up. They've got Seattle. They've allowed double-digit PPR fantasy points to George Kittle, Jake Tongas, Kate Otten, Juwan Johnson, Trey McBride twice, Jack Stahl, and Dalton Schultz. Some very good names, but also some, Chigo Okonkwo level names. All right, we're going to come back and answer your questions on Fantasy Football Today. We will be right back. Thanks very much to everybody for all of your questions. And we got some good ones today. That fantasy football guy, not to be confused with the fantasy football guy. Would you drop Kamani Vidal and Dalton Kincaid if you have Jacobs, Vidal, Benson, RJ Harvey, and Hampton, and you want a shot at the replacement running back? So I guess that'd be Gainwell and Wilson. Jamey, what do you think? Would you drop Vidal and Kincaid for those replacements?
I think you could drop Kincaid just because if you drop him now, he's not playing on Thursday. They already had their practice for today. He's not practicing. So if you drop him now, don't have to worry about somebody picking him up. You pick him up next week if you need him. Vidal's too tough to drop at this point because if Wilson and Gainwell don't start, you get Vidal coming back in Week 13, still the starter there. I'd rather have him than the replacement options in Green Bay and Pittsburgh right now.
Plus, you have Vidal and Hampton. Those are both Chargers running backs, so you'll at least have one starter for that great matchup that they have coming off the bye. What if Trey Benson doesn't practice on Wednesday? Or if we don't hear anything about it, you could potentially drop him.
I would hope that he's got Benson and Hampton on his IR spots.
Right. Kincaid is the one that makes the most sense to drop, as much as I hate the idea of dropping Kincaid.
All right, next question. Keep one, Charbonnet or Ken Walker?
Either one gets dropped, everybody else in your league is picking them up. So I would want to hold both, but if I have to drop one, I guess at this point you got to drop Charbonnet.
I agree. Don't want to, though. Want to keep both.
Am I making this up, or did Mike McDonald say they're going to get Ken Walker more work?
Well, they did that in Week 11. And I think they're going to have their chance to do it Week 12 against Tennessee. As an outside zone runner, he's going to run away from the teeth of that Titans defense. He could actually be you might actually feel good starting Kenneth Walker this week.
Yeah, here's the quote. Keep Walker. Mike McDonald said that Walker is, quote, showing that he deserves some more opportunities.
Oh, now he's showing it. What was he showing the last month or so? Mike.
Yeah. So there you go. That's an important note. All right, next question.
Kenneth wasn't running for 1.5 yards per carry like Zach Charbonnet did.
I'm guessing Ramondre Stevenson back this week. At least he's going to be practicing. Henderson or Judkins rest of season?
Henderson by a lot for me.
I agree.
Okay. Let's see. We got a trade here. Give up Bijan and Lamar Jackson.
That's a lot.
Get Gibbs and Josh Allen.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I mean, that's a Spider-Man meme. They're all great. It's like the two best running backs and the two best quarterbacks.
I think the Gibbs-Allen side might be a little bit better because Lamar Jackson has not played well the last couple of weeks. And Josh Allen just seems to be the only quarterback that has like mega upside from week to week.
And then we're going to see Lamar Jackson light up the Jets and Bijan Robinson light up the Saints. And we're going to say, whoa, should have gone with that side.
Gibbs has the Giants. All four of these guys could be awesome.
Allen's the one that makes me the most nervous of this foursome.
Really?
But yeah, against the Texans, absolutely.
Well, for this week, sure, but rest of season?
What do you think about this dynasty trade? Jones, a first, a second, and a third for Ibuka.
As somebody who continues to regret not having great receiver depth in his dynasty league, I would not make this deal. This is not enough for Emeka Ibuka.
I mean, look, anytime you throw in a first and multiple stuff, it's certainly going to be in the conversation, but I think Ibuka could be generational, so I would not be making this trade.
Right.
All right, that is it for Fantasy Football Today. If you enjoyed the show, please check out the Fantasy Football Today pod anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thanks a lot to Dave Richard and Jamey Eisenberg. And, of course, thanks a lot to all of you for watching. I'm Adam Aizer. Pumpkin pie is terrible. And good luck in Week 12.